Wenn vernünftige Bürger nicht handeln, bestimmen die Tyrannen die öffentliche Meinung. When reasonable voices fail to act, bullies control the narrative. Please, stick with me. I would explain. So I saw a little bit of clip from the interview with PM Deacon Mitchell and Callistra, where he goes above and beyond to trivialize, to diminish the harmful implications of pressure being applied by the United States when it comes to visa restrictions and CBI. As to say, oh, it's just about materialism here or there. That's what it's about. It's all about materialism. Why are you worried? Well, I've got news for you, Mr. Prime Minister. It is not just about materialism. It is about the ability of citizens who would not have had the opportunity otherwise to get an opportunity to go to the United States, to educate themselves, okay, to help elevate themselves, that the Grenadian economy in its current state may not be able to provide, as was seen in decades post-1983. But Grenadians don't have the luxury of doing any of that. With their hands, with their sweat, and their tears, and their blood, they have to build themselves. They don't have the luxury of dressing up in ice cream pants and give sweet speeches and mamagai their people and ride this all the way to the bank. They don't have that luxury. And it was interesting. I looked last night at a little bit of Jenny Simon, and she didn't pull any punches. She went in. She went in on these socialist Marxist radicals. But the thing about it, when you're confronting these sort of characters, sometimes you got to pull out the heavy artillery. And she did. So all post-1983, as she has said, that all those socialist Marxist radical leftists, they themselves seek opportunity in the Western societies. The very Western societies that they are chanting down right now, they themselves were able to benefit from opportunities. Some of them went to study and came back to Grenada. Some of them never came back, but they were able to elevate themselves materially, okay, by using these Western capitalist societies that they claim to hate so much. What a paradox. What a contradiction. What a load of hogwash. What a load of hypocrisy. Kamala Ambassador Prasad said it. You want to go to these people's country, but you're bad-mouthing them. You ain't going to all these other countries that you claim to love so much, you know. But you want to go to these people's countries, but you're bad-mouthing them. Stay in your country then and build your country. Or go to the countries that you claim you love so much. You ain't going there for nothing. The problem is that you guys are so happy now, and you guys are so materially enriched based on opportunities provided by Western societies that now you have the luxury to come and engage in intellectual exercises and chant down the people's country. Why don't you go to the countries you claim to love so much? Why don't you go there and look for opportunities? But even locally, let me tell you what these people are cunning foxes. You gotta be careful with them. And I don't even know if the Grenadian people or the average Grenadian citizen understand who and what they're dealing with. Okay? And by offering them up a platform and some sort of power sharing between the current administration and these radical leftists, was sie da tun, ist gefährlich. What this current administration is doing by encouraging these guys, calling these guys, and becoming bedfellows with them is dangerous. Was sie da tun, ist gefährlich. Was sie da tun, ist gefährlich. Because you know not what you lie with. Okay? It's like a relationship, intimate relationship. You don't get into bed with people you know nothing about. That is gefährlich. And again, as I have always said, I know there is some sort of obsession with Marsh. All these new little young cats in the administration want to be like Marsh. They never even seen the guy in the flesh. They saw him on TV. Okay? But they want to be like Marsh. They want to romanticize what Marsh was and wasn't. Okay? They want to romanticize the PRG. And these cunning fucks, the benefactors, these far left, radical leftists, are so sneaky and cunning, okay, that they come into these guys and pretending that there's some big advisors, okay, and there were some big strategic thinkers during the PRG. Strategic thinkers, my ass. But you see, I'm in some respects, I wouldn't say happy, but in some respects, I'm saddened on one side, and on the other side, I'm pleased that they were given an opportunity in this US-Venezuela geopolitical spat to pretend that there were some big advisors to the current administration, and they dropped the ball. They failed miserably as strategic thinkers, so that the people who didn't know that they're amateurs when it comes to strategic thinking, no. We already knew. We saw it before. We knew. Like all the lieutenant colonel and them pretending there's some big strategic thinkers now. They're some big honchos. Then you must ask them, why they send the company to an ambush done by Foxing on D-Day? And when they went into that ambush, guess what they said? Oh, well, the Cubans didn't help us defend the airport. That is how unstrategic in thinking they are. That they expected that the Cubans was going to fight for them after they killed Morris, when the Cubans were endeared to Morris. This is how these people think. This is how unstrategic these people think. Send the company of young men into an ambush by Foxing, but they're big strategic thinkers. Had it not been for that young man Beggs, who was part of the point element and was able to turn that Land Rover in the middle of the road to save most of the company, they would have all perished. They would have all perished. Had it not been for that other young man who was able to reverse a BTR from True Blue all the way in the back of Dusty Highway, all the way to Lansepine, that people who saw it swear say the guy was driving forward. Under fire. Had it not been for that gentleman, he and the guys in his BTR would have been toast. And these people talking about their strategic thinkers. Yeah, there's so much strategic thinkers that they send all these young men from Grand Roy into an ambush by Busheju. 16 and 17-year-olds. That is what they're good at. This is what these men are good at. Sending young men to sacrifice themselves for their causes and ask them where they were. It's the same thing they did to some young men in St. Andrews. Two who are particularly dear to me. Send them out in Pearls Airport as part of a security element for an anti-aircraft crew. Okay? To face one of the most sophisticated armies in the world. So that's why I tell you, it's the regular Grenadian man that has guts. But these little punks, ask them where they were. Ask them where they were. They were hiding. All this big mouth union bully, okay, who come in now and try to bully Grenadians with his big old deep voice, when they used to be walking around with Makarov in their waist, bullying Grenadians, coming again with his big old deep voice and feel he could come back in this your time and bully Grenadians. Yeah. Feel he could come back in this your time and bully Grenadians. This is what you encourage in the society. You allow these people to bully you. And when it comes time for them to play big warlord, they run and hide. And it's not like the people, it's like there's some of their comrades don't know them. Man. Their comrades know them. And when they meet me personally and silently, they go say, you know what? Yo, don't worry, man. We understand what you're saying. So the people know them. The real ones know who they are. And their own comrades will say to me, boy, watch, keep doing what you're doing. Let no one stop you. God rest his soul. That was one of the last things that Raw Steele. That was one of the last things that Raw Steele said to me the day before he passed. He said, boy, Perry, keep doing what you're doing. Let no one stop you. But he knows. He knows. Wolves and hyenas can't stop lions. He knows. Yeah, men from Region 1. Okay? Solid, real ones who would meet me and say, my big brothers, my uncles, and say, yeah, you see what's going on? They're leading the next generation of youth astray. Because they themselves were young men. These men from Region 1 were young men. And they were led astray by them. So they could testify now and say, look, yeah, look at them. You think they see all you? You think they see all you? They themselves could say, yeah, well, look, you see what's going on? Silently, they're going to meet me and tell me. You see what's going on? They're leading the next generation of youth astray. Just as how they led that previous generation astray 40-something years ago. I saw a little bit of clip where the Prime Minister said, oh, I was careful to act. I didn't want to act because in this big geopolitical situation, there was so much protest and so much voices against it. I only said we was going to consider it. So these people think they're smarter than everybody else. You guys sent these protests and activated these protests and activated all that was going on in the radical leftist media to try to sabotage the process. Okay? To make the society feel that, hey, Grenadians really don't want no radar in Grenada. That was you guys propagandist doing. Okay? But you guys are masters of propaganda. You have extensive experience in doing it. You did it during the revolution. You are master propagandists. Two things you guys are good at. Hijacking what was created by other people's sweat and blood. And propaganda. But when it comes down to it, you guys are strategic amateurs. It was shown. It was shown then, and thank goodness who didn't know. It was shown again in this time, so that the youth, if they have careful eyes and they have careful thinking, will realize that you guys are amateurs. And I meant to tell you, they are. They so are. Don't let them fool you and make you feel like there's some big master strategists and big warlords. They were a bunch of cowards that ran and hide. Okay? When D-Day came, they ran and hide. And left the regular Grenadian man on the battlefield to fend for themselves and fight and stand up and try to face one of the greatest armies in the world. These are who these people are. So if you think they're going to be there to have your back when the shit hits the fan, boy, you're deadly wrong. And these people are so megalomaniac and arrogant. I see one of them in a little clip. They had an interview with him, the major. Okay, that's the same one that was playing Big Bajan, came into the CC meeting when they were trying to resolve the problems they were having with Marsh and the quote-unquote code faction, came in to a CC meeting where he knocked her off and slammed it down on the table and said, boy, look here, we better have a solution right now or else we go end up with an Afghan solution. Okay? And the Afghan solution was where hardline socialist, Marxist radicals in Afghanistan in the 70s, early 80s, okay, were able to destroy their leader and take power because he wasn't as radical enough for them. And ultimately, it was self-fulfilling prophecy because that's what they did to Marsh. They used to use a big term. And it's so interesting that, well, Deacon could say yes, based on their perception that he is somewhat like Marsh. They used to use a big term during that time. Oh, Marsh like to vacillate. Marsh vacillating too much. What is he waiting on to make a decision? The decision is already decided. Marsh like to vacillate. Well, I guess Marsh and Deacon are one thing in common. Because Deacon like to vacillate. 6 months after and above, he said, oh, well, we're still considering the radar and placement in Pointe-Saint International Airport. This gentleman may feel that the United States is some little boy. This gentleman may feel that the United States is some little PBC boy that he's playing around with. That's what he thinks. He doesn't understand that the men behind the United States are women and the State Department, these people have decades of experience. Okay? These people know exactly what they're doing, both seen and unseen. So when you think that you can deceive them, boy, oh boy, you're wrong. you're seriously wrong. Boy, when you think you can play them, I guess we're all playing with fire. Because these people, as I've said it before, there is nothing that will stand in the way of the United States pursuance of their national and foreign interests. There is nothing. As wise people, we should all take note. As I have said, that Grenada is best positioned to deal with diplomatic and geopolitical situations like we're seeing right now, only if it will wisely draw upon its experiences. Experience, they say, is the greatest teacher of all. So this same major, they recently, I think, interviewed him, relatively recent, not recent, but you see the major laughing and grinning and smirking and saying, oh, when they're talking about what happened in October 19th, scoffing and he grinning and he's smirking and he's saying, it is gazetted. No civilians should go on a military base. And he's scoffing while he's saying it, right? And grinning. And oh, those people went up by Mount Welldale. They got sweet. That's his expression. They got sweet when we were firing in the air. They got sweet, so they feel they could do more. So it's like to him, they got sweet, okay? All you didn't fire on them or gun them down in front of Mount Welldale. But because they got sweet, all you said, nah, you gun them down on the fort. Because they got too sweet. You're a big badge for civilians. Oh, you stormed the fort. Awesome military operation. And when you have opportunity to beat all the great warlords, all you pretended to be, all you run and hide. That's what I say, all you can tell me nothing. The only man that can say something to me, because he's a man of guts, is the lieutenant. That's the only man. And it's so sad, I always say, that this gentleman could have such an illustrious military career and retire with dignity and honor had he not been corrupted by petty bourgeois socialist Marxists. Because this family that, who knew the gentleman said the gentleman is such a nice little quiet gentleman in Paddock. Okay? Just they in the corner, just cool. But these petty bourgeois socialist Marxist radicals destroyed, in some respects, this young man's life. Okay? Because some of them are a little older than him. The same lieutenant used to go up by the men in the north, okay, eat, drink, okay, with these men. And then this revolution came and turned this man against his brothers, okay? And for the things that the people of the north suffered at the hands of this southern clique, okay, it's just disgraceful. But to credit, I have to give a lot of credit to Mr. Francis Pierre, because he tried to educate in some respects and warn Grenadians too. Okay? And he was bold and brave about it. And I know, especially with all this divisiveness and this victimization that is currently present and the atmosphere and climate that's present, it takes a lot of courage for him to also do what he's trying to do. I don't know if the gentleman personally experienced the wrath of the PRG, but I'm sure he might have had people around him, okay, for all that was going on in the north, that might have experienced the wrath of the PRG. So this gentleman knows, I'm sure he knows, that is why he's providing valuable insights into this stuff, okay? Because again, history is the greatest teacher, but you have to have a connect between the generations that went before you and the generations that are current. That is the only way. If you don't have a weaving of these generations so you can pass on knowledge, then forget about it. So, just want to say to Mr. Francis Pierre, continue to do what you're doing. These men, okay, these socialist Marxists, radical leftist socialist Marxists, had a perfect opportunity in this year time. With all the US-Venezuela geopolitical spat, okay, they had a perfect opportunity because of the experiences, because they were there. so they could have guided the youth of Grenada and Grenadians at large about how to approach this situation in a very politically strategic and diplomatic way. But they dropped the ball. They allowed the emotions to supersede the intellect. They had a perfect opportunity to say, you know what? Let's provide some guidance to these youth and them, because they don't understand what and who they're dealing with. You see what I'm saying? They could have done that. You know how amazing that would have been? And interesting enough, today they want to come back and deceive and radicalize the Grenadian youth. So you had the Prime Minister say, oh, well, the voices were talking up against the radar. That was all your voices that all you activated. Look at the people that were talking. And what they did, they bullied into silence any other voice. And the Prime Minister talked about debate. There was no debate on the issue. I mean, come on, you're a lawyer. You know what a debate means. A debate is where you have a situation where you have two opposing sides and they present their arguments back and forth and they try to prove that their arguments are true. There was no debate about that issue. There was a bunch of radical leftists protesting all over the place and radical leftist cohorts in the media assisting them to try to influence public opinion. And then you have a bunch of petty bourgeois intellectuals that came also, radical leftists themselves, to try to influence public opinion. So there's no debate. As I told you, if I was from Mars and I came to Grenada and I saw what was happening in Grenada at that time, I would have swear say that Lenin was born in Grenada and that Grenada was the most radical socialist, Marxist, leftist state. I would have sworn that the Bolshevik revolution started in Grenada. But this is what these people have done. These radical leftists have hijacked every prominent period in Grenada as if it's their own. They hijacked the Julian Federal Rebellion and they don't give context as to what that was. That was pretty much a fight between the British and the French. Okay? And a French colored planter, Julien Ferrat, who was allied with the French, tried to sabotage, overtake the country in the name of the French and tried to fight the British and was successful in some respects. Cornered the British on what is now Fort George. Okay? In St. George's. And they had to send, what a coincidence, 10,000 troops, British reinforcement, to retake the island from Julien Ferrat and his rebels. But they were supported by the French. But these socialist radical leftists incorporates Julien Ferrat's stand into their mythology. So you hear all of them talk about Julien Ferrat, the rebellion. That is socialist Marxist thinking. They incorporate that fight as if to say that Julien Ferrat was some socialist Marxist. This is how these people twist history. Every major point of history in Grenada, these radical socialist leftist petty bourgeois hijacked it. They have hijacked intellectual thought in Grenada. And they have intellectual petty bourgeois and these so-called doctors of this and doctors of that leading the push. Justifying what they're doing. Doctor this and doctor that. Doctor this and doctor that, my ass. Doctors of crapology. That is what they are. Because one of them pretending that, the big doctor this and doctor that, and wasn't able to tell Grenadians before the fact or to advise the administration that, hey, this is how you deal or this is how you navigate the current diplomatic and geopolitical situation in the Caribbean. But all of a sudden, after consequences and pressure was applied on the Grenadian administration and the Grenadian people collectively, then she comes and she writes a whole thesis on Facebook, pretending to know so much about geopolitical situations and pretending then after the fact to advise the Grenadian administration. Yeah, talking about that one. She part of the Southern crew, as call him, I tell you. The two Wendy's and the Lieutenant Colonel. That's the crew, the Southern crew. She come after the fact and pretend she's a big old and pretend she's some big honcho, some big strategic thinker. after the fact, when pressure is being applied on Grenada and consequences thereof. Then she comes and writes a big paper talking about, the experiences learned during 83 and during the revolution. Why didn't you tell them that? If you had such foresight, why didn't you tell them that before they got into the situation they got into? Because I always tell you, it is easier to stay out of a situation than to get into the situation and try to get out. You're such masterful political strategic thinker, and you couldn't tell them how to deal with the situation before the fact. Then you see again, no, they have what? Grenada coalition of peace. As if they know how and what sustain that zone of peace in the Caribbean. Again, I will reiterate, it was United States funding and arms that sustained the zone of peace in the Caribbean. There was no other state. It was the United States that facilitated the formation of the RSS. So you're talking about zone of peace. Again, trying to hijack zone of peace. Y'all created any zone of peace? Was there a zone of peace in 1979? Was there a zone of peace in 1983? Talking about zone of peace. You all know how that zone of peace was created and maintained? Again, hijacking everything that everybody else created. What did y'all create? You have all these petty bourgeois intellectuals, and you have some of them from the rural areas, who should know better, Okay? They join the Southern clique because they want to be part of it. They want to be part of, we're the intellectual petty bourgeois. You have Ali killing them. A gentleman from the quote-unquote, you'd say rural area. Okay? On the western side. And this gentleman would have heard probably news stories about gentlemen, these young fellas that was sacrificed at Boucherjou during 1983. 16-year-old and 17-year-old. They sent down to counterattack down in Boucherjou. And they all perished. And this gentleman should have heard about this story within the village. This gentleman should have known about the story of one of Morris's bodyguards who had to run for his life and seek refuge. And he outmaneuvered the PRG government and the PRA at the time. The RMC outmaneuvered them. And he went and hid out in Budge Grove area. Okay? So Ali Gill should have known about these stories. So instead of Ali Gill talk about these stories and heroism of men in his own village, okay, who actually went and was instrumental in freeing Morris Bishop from house arrest. Ali Gill comes down and talks about zone of peace and zone of peace. Please, what does this gentleman know about zone of peace? What is this gentleman? But no, he joined that sudden radicalized leftist clique. So you want to be part of the clique. You want to be, intellectual petty bourgeois. Yo, my mans, why don't you stick to wearing the dashiki all over the place and pretend you're some big African king? Why don't you stick to that? You used to do that when we were at IFE together. Continue doing that. Go around, put on your dashiki all over the place and pretend you're some big African king. But don't come here pretending, okay, that you're some big strategic thinker and you know about some zone of peace. Grenada coalition for the zone of peace. A Grenada coalition of peace. Oh, please. Please. Not an intellectual petty bourgeois. Dr. Marshall, who always said you want to keep the name of Morris Bishop alive and made serious attempt to do it. So I give him props for that. But this gentleman again come and start talking about zone of peace. And the gentleman brings his esteemed grandfather's name into this, which I was a little sad about because this gentleman was such a warrior. He may not have been a general, okay? He may not have led an army, but this gentleman, Mr. T.A. Marshall, was in some respects a warlord, an intellectual warlord. And I think he might be disappointed that his grandson is now talking all this unstrategic garbage, talking about zone of peace. Dr. Marshall, who maintained the zone of peace for the last 40 years? Who's funding and arms that maintain that zone of peace? Because peace is maintained by arms. A man who was involved in personal security should at least at minimum know that. You're breaking my heart, sir. You're breaking my heart. And here again, you see all this independence thing? They hijack that again. We're having a big panel discussion about the 52nd independence celebrations. We're going to have a panel discussion. Again, the intellectual, radical, leftist petit bourgeois in Grenada hijacks the narrative again, as if they were instrumental in seeking and guaranteeing independence for Grenada. They're basically trying to write out Sir Eric Matthew Gary's impact on the process. And they hijack it. Like, oh, it was a revolution. That, again, they hijack independence. Yeah, it was the revolution. It was socialist Marxists that gave Grenada independence. It was socialist Marxists that was responsible for delivering independence to Grenada. Y'all hijack that again. Okay? But I blame you, grown people in the society. I blame you because you allow all these intellectual, radical leftist petit bourgeois to hijack everything. They hijack your ambition, they turn it into theirs. They hijack everything that you've achieved, and they turn it into theirs. Okay? Where are all the other intellectuals in the society who should be discussing this with honesty? But no, you all leave it to these radical leftists to control the narrative. As if, oh, independence is theirs. Yeah, the radical leftists freed Grenada from the British. And they will diminish, or they will bury, or they will hide the amazing efforts of Sir Eric Matthew Gary. Any discussion held about that should not be based on some leftist, Marxist, radical discussion. No way. These people are intellectually dishonest. And Vasitun is fallish. That again is dangerous. Because that is how they sneakily radicalize. Okay? And they make attractive their philosophy because they will have Grenadians believe that all the great things Grenada achieved was done in 4 years. Okay? The 4 years when they toyed, advantage, brutalized, and propagandized the Grenadian people. That I want you to see how dangerous it is what these people are doing. These intellectual, radical leftist petit bourgeois have hijacked the narrative. They've hijacked the significant portions of the history of Grenada and trying to make you believe that, oh, all these things were achieved by radical leftists, Marxists. So that's how they propagate and proselytize their movement. That's how they do it. And they're influencing, hijacking, and thieving the minds of the Grenadian youth and corrupting the minds of the Grenadian youth. And you grown people sit there and don't even realize what is happening. Grown people, the real intellectuals in the society, sit there and let these doctors of capology spew garbage to the society. You don't challenge them. You sit there and you allow it to happen. There's no debate on the issue. They have hijacked every significant moment in Grenada's history and incorporated it and speak on it that it has some sort of social Marxist genesis. This is how dangerous these people are. This is how intellectually dishonest these people are. And again, as I told you, they just corrupt young men for their own benefit. And when the shit hits the fan, they leave you on the battlefield by yourself. So they left another 15-year-old and 16-year-old who is dear to me to be part of a security element out in Pearls. Okay? As part of an anti-aircraft crew. Standing up to one of the greatest armies in the world. They left them there, 15 and 16-year-old. Okay? And fate was on these gentlemen's side. So they survived. Fate was on their side. And with this 15 and 16-year-old, they also had a brave young woman, a girl. Okay? This is who these people left on the battlefield to fight their battles. Okay? That amazing young woman, apparently she was the loader for the ZU. Okay? And there's some sort of slight little comical twist about what happened where things got so heated over there. Okay? That after getting off some good fire, the young woman was so terrified. when she see and faced with the stark reality of what was happening, okay, they said the young woman stripped down to her undies and ran. So they also said that the German was fine, and when he realized that it jammed, so he keep calling the young woman, Susan, feed me, feed me. When he turned around, he saw the young woman running through a fixed stool, almost naked. You understand? This is the kind of trouble that these gentlemen and them will get you in. And they coming to rescue you. And this young woman, well, she's probably a very grown woman now, is probably one of all your parents, or some of all your parents. She should tell you guys a story. Again, the same lieutenant from Tongue, God rest his soul, and I hope he lays in heaven with warriors of the world. That same lieutenant who they tried to intimidate, that's the same lieutenant who was on Fort Rupert. And when Morris came up to the fort, he had all these people disrespecting him. And the lieutenant said, no. Morris is the commander-in-chief. So they always talk about command structure. And, oh, this is not allowed and that is not allowed. If you understand any fundamental of command structure, you would know that you cannot give command if you cannot take command. And for all the talk about, oh, the commander-in-chief shouldn't do that and shouldn't do this. Do you understand the expression? The commander-in-chief. Okay? So the commander-in-chief outranks all of you little punks. They're talking about adherence to law and adherence to command. Please, you all think you're talking to some kids? Y'all could only fool people who don't know. Y'all could only deceive PM Deacon Mitchell. Because unfortunately, the young man didn't know. And he may be impressed or believe that you guys are some big strategic thinkers. But by now, if he doesn't realize that you guys are amateurs and you guys are leading him down the wrong path, well, I don't know. I don't know. Well, you know what they say, health is wealth. So let's take a word from our sponsors now. These guys will help keep you healthy.
Fit for life and allied laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for life and allied laboratories, see our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. Fit for life and allied laboratories, we're taking care of Grenada.
I hope he's wise. And in some respects, I hope in this time he's wiser than Marsh. And he understands that now is the time to dissociate himself from these radical leftist socialist Marxists. A word to the wise is sufficient. Well, thanks again for sharing your precious time with us. We appreciate it if you subscribe, comment below, let us know how you feel about all of this. Remember, we have formed the Well community. This is a community that is working for you, that wants to bring awareness. And through that awareness, we can get education. And through education, there will be liberation from charlatanism, mockery, sensationalism, and incompetence. Now, again, if you appreciate our content, show some love. Hit us up on the super thanks to show your appreciation. Share the word. Share this video with all your friends and family. Get the word out. This is the only way we are going to liberate everyone. And now I end with our dear symbol and our theme song.
the flow.